Okay, so the tickets, right? We talk about the four main components. First, we have a request, right? So example is the Kevin says, or the Kevin believes, or the Kevin request. The says means the Kevin believes, or the Kevin requests, or the Kevin believes, right? And then he is able to read a object, right? Read object. Maybe I should use the example, ticket example, right? So the request means a Tina, right? So Tina, okay. So let me just use the blue. Okay, so the Tina request, or Tina believes that she's able to sit on 25-1, right? And then the God, right? The God is here, and then she sends she presenting this ticket to the God, right? And then here is the flight, right? And then the access control policy, right? This is like authorization policy said the smoothing airline has a jurisdictions, right? And this is something that the policy set by the authority. In this case, authority is what? Smooth airline. Controls, right? Has a jurisdictions that Tina is authorized, right? Is authorized to sit on 25D, flight number 1, right? And then tickets speaks for this smoothing airline. By the way, this one, right? This speaks for. Let me just, I want to kind of change this a little bit. The speaks for really means there are a couple of things. Usually this notion speaks for is that whenever this is like a tickets or is it tokens, right? Or ASM device, right? This speaks for is really there are many different meanings, right? The first one is you can say the tokens, right? Or like or this one even said certificates, okay? But well, certificate. Let's not talk about the certificate. Okay, so it's token, right? Or you can think this is associations. Okay, so that means ticket has a association with the smoothing airline, or maybe you can think is a ticket is a token issued by what? Smoothing airline, right? You can, if you want to use this concept, you can say the ticket is some kind of evidence or the token issued by this authority, the smoothing airline, right? Or if you want to use this meaning, you can think the ticket has an association with the smoothing airline, right? And then the finally said the tickets, right? The token says, right, and believes that the Tina, so you can say this is, in this case, is this token publish or the speaks or the says or the believe that Tina is authorized to what? Sit on sit at 25D number 1, right? So basically there are 4 components, right? That's for the tickets. Now let's talk about access control policy. Okay. Remember, I said on the week I said that there are 3 main security policies, right? The first one is the multi-level security policy, MLS, and there's another access control policies, or role-based access control policies, right? And this is known as RBAC. And then, by the way, this is now, this is very important. And then there's a discretionary access control policy. I think that's, I forgot the acronym. Discretionary, let me see. Discretionary access control policy, right? Oh, that, right. So this is discretionary access control policies, right? And so this is known as a DAC, a DAC policy, and this is multi-level. MLS means multi-level security policy, meaning that like secret, top secret, and it has a levels, right? And then classified, unclassified, right? That's like multi-level security policy. And the reason that I said I'm going to just only talk about this two is that discretionary access control policy is DAC. It's really ACL, access control list. That's a core of discretionary access control policy, which is mainly used by your operating system, OS. Windows, Linux, right? I think there are only two main operating system policy, right? And the Mac, right? I don't know much about the Mac. Anyway, most of the operating system use DAC policy, right? And pretty much DAC policy is based on access control policies, right? And then I'm gonna talk about ACL now, right? So once you understand the ACL, I don't have to really talk about the DAC policy, right? So any question? Okay. Now let's talk about ACL, okay? But before we talk about the ACL, let's talk about ticket base. I know that we just covered the ACL, I mean the tickets, right? But basically, what I'm trying to do is I want to catch two birds throwing the one stone, right? So basically, you know what? I'm gonna use the example, right? No, actually, okay. So ACL, right? So this is our main topic, but let's say I'm gonna draw the. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw like vertical line here, right? And then you know that let's talk about the ticket based, right? The first component is access request, right? And the subject in our previous example, like Tina, right? Tina says that she would like to sit on the 25D, right? So that's like her request, right? So this means like sit on 25D, right? Okay. So the access request, and then the actual access policy. The access policy says the authority, which is a smoothing airline, has a jurisdictions, right? Controls that the Tina is authorized to sit on what 25D, right? That's access policy, right? And then the next one is a tickets, which is a ticket assumption or is a trust assumption. It says the tickets speaks for the authority. The ticket speaks for the smoothing airline, right? Or you can think as the ticket has a association with the authority, right? And then last one is the the last one is what the ticket says, right? What the ticket says is I think that the assumption is there's a name. No, actually there's a tickets, and it's which said the tickets says, right? And this is what is really written on the ticket, right? What is really written on the ticket is, so basically the ticket believes that the subject Subject is what? Subject is authorized, or the TINA is authorized to sit on 25D, right? So that's a ticket-based approach, right? Now let's compare the ACL. So access control list is has a similar components, right? So first, access control policy says that, okay, so this one, right? The same thing, exactly same. Authority controls, has a jurisdictions over this, which is subject is authorized to sit on a 25D, right? So the access control policy is exactly the same. And the request, right? So there's a request part, right? The request says the subject says, so in this case, the TINA says what? Basically, it says this, right? And usually this is, that it's usually, right? Access rights, and then the object, right? So read, write. Access right means read, write, or in our airline example, the access right is sit, right? And object means like file 1, file 2. In our airline example, the object is a seat, right? Seat 25D. Okay. So ACL, the access request and access policy logic is exactly same, right? And then the next one is the next one has some difference. Okay, so this one is you have to be a little bit you have to pay attention. Okay, and now the difference is, in this case, ticket says, and ticket really has an association with the authority, right? But in this case, oh no, actually, hold on. You know what? Even this is a similar. Sorry, I'm not talking about this one. Okay, sorry. So this is like vertical line, right? And you know what? Even this is a very similar, because ACL, access control list. By the way, this is access control list, right? The ACL and speaks for the authority. Right? Can you see that this? So you see that the first three components are exactly same between the ticket-based, which is what? What is a good example of the ticket-based? Is Kerberos, right? I don't know whether if I have time to cover the Kerberos, but the Kerberos, it's used by Microsoft. Microsoft what? What is it? Yeah, Active Directory. Thank you. Yes, Active Directory. Yes. So, but ACL is used by the most operating systems, like Windows operating system, the Linux, and etc. Right? So as you can see, the three of them are exactly same. You'll be very surprised, right? Then you'll probably ask me, okay, Professor, then what is the difference between a ticket-based access control and ACL-based access control, right? The last is that's like this is the main difference. Okay. And now the ACL, right? ACL says now it says many things. ACL said the subject one controls something. So, and then access control said subject 2 controls fee 2, and etc. And then later it says subject n, right? Subject n controls has authorized to do. Okay, so I want you to know that I want you to see that the difference between the ticket-based and ACL, right, is this mainly. Okay, so now let's just I'll show you the example. I mean, I showed the one example of ticket-based access control policy, right? Now let's look at the ACL. Okay, one example of the ACL. Where is the hold on, let me just pause. Okay, so now it's recording. Good. Okay, so you see that the access control list, this is the main difference. You see the subject one controls, right? So basically the one example is given in the book is this is suppose that Erica is invited to a dinner meeting where the delicate negotiations are to be held. Because of the sensitive nature of the talks, the meeting is being held in a private dining room, right? At the door of the dining room is, whatever with the guest list of all the attendees, okay? So the list is authorized, right? Basically, you can, Erica and Danielle and Gina, right? They are basically allowed to get into this room, right? So basically, it says it has a couple of components, right? So pretty much this situation, we can use ACL, okay? So now I'm gonna basically follow these 4 components, right? The first, this example is we have what? We have Erica. Okay, so basically this is a private room, right? This is a private room. And then there's a guard, right? Or in our case, in operating system term, this is known as what? Reference monitor. But the reference monitor is nothing but a guard, right? In the real situation, right? This is guard or the reference monitor. And this is a door, right? Okay, so this is a private room. And then we know that Erica and then basically Danielle and then Gina, basically, they are the guest, right? So they can actually get into this private room. So now the first example is Erica. So the Erica arrives. Here's Erica, right? And Erica has tried to get into this room, right? But God is basically first. So this Erica is requesting, right? That, hey, I'd like to get into this room. So she's requesting, right? So that can be represented as Erica says what? I'd like to enter. That's her access right. And then what is the object? Object is dining room. Right? So that's the request. So that's the first. Right? And then that's number 1. And then number 2, who is the authority in this example? There is a manager. So the manager is the authority, right? And who write the access control policy, right? The manager is the one who creates this access control policy. And according to the manager has a jurisdictions, right? The controls that what? Erica is authorized. So it means controls, and then enter dining room, right? I'll say dining room, right? Okay, so that's the access control policy, right? Which is this. I mean, this is so far that there's no difference. The ticket-wise and the access control, ACL, right? And then what is the third one? The The third one says that the ACL, right, has a association with what? The manager. Okay, you know what? Okay, another thing. And then the fourth one, right? The ACL says, okay, so this is a different compared to the tickets, and it says what? Three things, right? Erica controls enter dining room. I'll just say room. And then what? Donnell or controls, same thing, right? And then what? The Gina controls this, right? So that's what ACL says. Okay. So Erica just first tried to get into this room, and God will look at the Erica. Okay. There's one thing is really missing in this formalization is that we assume, okay, there's assumption. Okay, this is not really in the book, but assumption is that the God is successfully identify the Erica. Authentication is done. Okay, so that's the assumption, by the way. So once the God, check her identity, meaning that God is able to authenticate Erica. That, by the way, that part is not in this format, right? It's not in this component. But we assume that God is able to authenticate Erica. In other words, Erica is successfully authenticated by the God. Okay, so that's assumption. In that case, what the God is going to do is he's going to look at the ACL, right? And then look at the list, and then the God said what? Oh, here's Erica, right? And Erica is able to get into this room, right? So now Erica is getting to this room. Okay, by the way, and in my last lecture, right, I talk about this this proof, right? This is like a proof. And then at the proof, based on the proof, basically, so this is your premise, right? So this is your premise, and then at the conclusion is this, right? Basically, the conclusion is, yes, SID 25D, right? The same thing. I'm going to skip the proof, this case, okay? Okay, so the thing is, I'm going to skip the proof, and you don't have to write the proof in your summary note for the ACL. So if this is your premise, right, what is your conclusions? So let's say 1, 2, 3, 4. And then if you have 4 premises, if you have 4 hypotheses, and the conclusion is a phi, in this case is what? Enter a dining room. Right? Let's assume that. Okay? I'm going to skip that the verification part. Okay? So just believe that this is true. So once you have 4 premises, and this is the conclusions made by God. Okay, the reference monitor. Okay? So any question? Okay, now so let's just take a 1 minute break, and in my next lecture, I'm going to talk about the difference between the ACL and the practical difference, okay, pragmatic difference between ACL and ticket based. Okay, so let's take a 1 minute break.